Hey there everyone, Atesh here, back again with another video, and in this video we're gonna do the Linux installation. So all those people who are watching this video for the first time, make sure you watch the other videos. We are running a Linux series, but there is one big thing before I start the Linux installation process that I want to tell you. Don't you know, my friend, that Linux shows no mercy to the first time installers? Okay, I do agree that was a little bit over dramatic, but what I want to say is please make sure you have backup for all of your files in case you are installing and using this method for a full-fledged install or a dual boot. If you're following up exactly my instruction throughout the series, then you don't need to worry about anything. The method that we are going to follow for this installation, and I recommend all of you to do this installation first and then the dual boot or whatever the things you want to do. So if you're following up these instructions that I'm going to show you in this video, then you don't need to worry about anything. Everything is being taken care of. Even if you do some mistakes, it's totally okay. You're not going to be deleting any single file in your system. Rest assured. So if you're installing all these things just as I walk you through, then it's totally okay. But in case you're using this video as a knowledge source for installing it as a dual boot, or you want to totally install everything on your main machine, then you're going to need a couple of things to get started for that part also. First and foremost, get one thing out of your head, that your machine is a very special machine. No, it's not, regardless of what brand you're using, whether it's HP, Dell, maybe a high-end gaming machine or whatever that is. The reason why that machine is working so flawlessly with the Windows because thousands of engineers are working on writing the drivers and making everything compatible. So whatever your trackpad is, whatever your keyboard is, whatever these hardwares are that companies are using, they just make a request to Microsoft or sometimes write their drivers and send them to Microsoft that, hey, please make sure that Windows is compatible to all the hardware that we're using. But in your case, since you are using a Linux which is not having thousands of paid engineers, chances are high that some things may not work, and that may include your keyboard, your mouse, your trackpad, your wireless drivers and everything. So I'm going to give you a list that are the things that you need. First and foremost, in case you're doing this installation thing, make sure you're doing it on a given Sunday or maybe a free day, because you really don't want to do that in a hurry up. So make sure you do that everything on a free day. Get an external mouse because your trackpad may not work with Linux. Get any brand keyboard because there are chances that your keyboard might not work. Make sure it's the wired one and not the wireless one. And also make sure that you have an Ethernet cable. This is a cable which you plug in into your router and your computer so that you get an internet connection, because the highest chances are that in the full-fledged installation, you don't have the wireless connection. And in order to resolve any of these problems, like mouse is not working or that is not working, you need to install some of the drivers, and that is only possible through internet. So this is a must-have. Now you have collected all the material, and in case you don't want to collect all of that, follow my installation advice on the VirtualBox that we are going to be following and doing in this series. So now let's move ahead and try to understand the installation process. Make sure you watch each and every step very, very closely. But there is one more thing, just one more thing that you need for this installation, regardless of you are doing it in VirtualBox or real world. Grab yourself an iced tea, because you're going to be staring the screen for a really long time. So make that iced tea.
I hope everybody got the assets that we need for this installation video. Now I highly recommend to first go through along with me, watch this video, and then only try the installation process. The most important thing is the first installation should be onto your VirtualBox. It should not be on your main machine. Otherwise, I'm pretty sure you're going to mess up the entire operating system, entire files and important stuff, and that's not going to be good here. I want to ask you a question, by the way. How many times did you, when you tried the first time installation of Linux, did you messed it up like deleting all the files? Did it happen to you? It actually happened to me as well. So first important step is to have backup. Now the way I'm going to walk you through with the installation process, you don't need to worry about backup or anything. This is not going to mess anything because it is in the virtual box. It's kind of in just one folder. You are installing an entire operating system, and that's it. That's all about it. Now another important thing is, make sure you also look out in the comment section, and if anybody says, hey, I want an installation of Debian, just let him know in the comment section that you need to watch entire series. Just comment down below. It will be super fun. I'm pretty sure somebody's going to come up and say, I want installation on Debian. We are all aware of the Linux, that we have another flavor, Debian, Red Hat, and all of that. So let's go ahead and talk about these steps. Now this video is going to be a little bit longer because I want to explain the features and a little bit more about the VirtualBox as well so that you can install it with its full potential. So we have a lot of options up here. Now what VirtualBox does, it creates you a file just like an exe. It gives you a VDI file, VDI extension, and you can simply just move that file also. You can give it to some friend or anybody else, and all the configuration and anything that you're gonna do into the Linux is actually transferable in the VirtualBox. So it has a lot of options and capabilities that we can use. First and foremost, we do have preferences here. In the preferences, you can see this is your default machine folder where all of the operating system that you're going to try to install is going to be installed here. After that, we have some of the important stuff like updates. There are certain command combinations which can only be transferred to this virtual machine through this input segment here. For example, the Control-Alt-Delete, which you are quite familiar on the Windows system, cannot be directly transferred into this VirtualBox. So we have to send an input through these input signals. Update, we all know about it. How does that work? Then we have language and display and all of that. Now this is the automatic default size display. The moment you're going to install the VirtualBox by my method, it's going to be onto a very small segment. And even if you do a full screen, it's not going to go into the full screen mode. We're going to talk about that later on, that how that works and how this X server actually helps you to do that. That's going to come up later on. After that, we have network. So by default, it connects into a NAT, which is a kind of a thing which bridges into your machine internet and your VirtualBox internet, but we do have other systems as well through which you can connect to internet as well. And then extension and proxy are pretty obvious ones. We have extensions and proxies, which I guess you don't need that. So we're going to close that right now. Then we have import and export. As I mentioned, that sometimes in the OS, you can transfer one Linux file to another with just VDIs and it's all good. So in that case, we goes for that. And in order to add those files, we have this add up here. Okay, enough of the talking. Now let's go ahead and click on the new. So as soon as you click on the new, you're going to get this one and it will be opened up in your system as the guided mode. There are a couple of modes in the VirtualBox, the guided and the expert mode. Yes, I know some of you are afraid of the expert mode, but you really want to go into that one. Now by default it says window, but I'm going to type my name as simply Ubuntu. And notice it automatically detects the Ubuntu here. So I'm going to call this as Ubuntu YT because it's a YouTube series that we are running up, and automatically detects that the type is Linux and it's an Ubuntu. And if you're going to open up that, we have a whole variety of Linux which we can have it, including from CentOS to Red Hat. A whole bunch of OS are there. Our is rightly detected. If not, just go ahead and do that. But you really don't want to do that just next here because you want to go into the expert mode. In most of the cases, in all of the cases, you want to go for the expert mode. So type in again here, we want to go for Ubuntu YT. And now it's asking it how much of the memory size you want to give. Now you don't have to worry too much about it because Ubuntu is fairly decent. It can run in pretty good in 1 gigs of RAM. And in my other system, we have pretty good amount of RAM. So I'm going to give it like 2 gigs here almost. So there we go. 2 gigs is fine because I have to record videos and it should be faster. On my other machine, I usually give 4 gigs of RAM, and it totally depends on how much RAM you are having in your system. So yeah, sometimes it's a little bit heavy RAM consuming process in initial days, but once you understand it here, you can install it on a full machine and can take advantage of the things here. So we're going to go ahead. Now the next option is hard disk. Now it says create a virtual disk now. This is the option that you want to use right now because it's going to create a virtual disk. That simply means it's going to create a folder and will treat that folder as an entire hard disk so that it can install it. I told you, this virtualization concept is moreover like a magic, and you're going to see that in a minute more about that. So we're going to click on create now, and now comes up some of the interesting stuff. Now, first and foremost, this is the file location where it's going to install all the things. And notice here closely this file extension, which is VDI. This VDI file extension is the file which can be transferred to your friend's computer, and you can probably save that. And this entire installation process can be saved up just by having this VDI file, and it just is so amazing. After that, it says how much file space size you want to give that. I think 20 gigs is really fine for Ubuntu, but don't worry, it doesn't really consume 20 gigs from your C drive directly. It's kind of a space that you want to give that if you want to expand more, you can do that. So notice here it says dynamically allocated. That means I'm not going to consume 20 gigs right at this moment, but I can consume it if I need that. And definitely you want to choose VDI, which is VirtualBox Disk Image. There are other types of this VDI which are supported by third parties as well, but right now we are all good with that. So we're going to click on create, and there we go. Now the half of the things are only done, because remember, we actually got this Ubuntu. We actually never walked it through. Looks like it got crashed. I'm going to open that up again. It's usual stuff on Windows. So notice here we have this Ubuntu ISO image, means a disk image, but we never actually showed it that where you should use that image. It's not going to do it automatically. Now you want to click on this Ubuntu. You see that a lot of options got opened up: general, system, display, storage. You want to navigate to the storage. By the way, the next method that I'm going to tell you is actually going to be asked to you directly when you click on the start as well, but I think it's better to have it here. So go into the storage, click on this optical drive. It's almost like clicking on this drive button and the drive is coming out of your computer. So click on that, and now you want to choose a disk. Click on the choose disk, and you want to click on Ubuntu or whatever the OS you are having. So you just need a disk here. And I'm going to click on open, and there we go. Now the disk is actually inside your computer, and now you can click on the start button. Means I'm turning on the computers. So I'm going to click on start, and now it's going to take a little bit while, depends on your machine. So as I told you, you need a lot of things to get started with this installation, and Iced is one of them. So now notice, you really don't want to close any of such messages. You always want to read these messages because you are on the learning phase. You just don't want to dismiss anything that comes up. So click on that, and it's going to give you all the message. I highly recommend to read them first. I have done this installation probably hundreds of times, so I know them. And you really want to read all of these messages. They gives you the idea about the feature which is being provided by that. So let's wait for a couple of seconds till it loads up the Ubuntu. In the meantime, I want to show you more stuff. Look at the very bottom of this Ubuntu here. There are a lot of things available here, that how to get in a command into it and all of that. So whenever you right click on any of them, a lot of options are going to be shown to you. For example, let's just say your trackpad is not working on your operating system or your machine. So what you want to do is simply just connect a USB mouse and just right click on that and just name that mouse and just click on connect. As soon as the tick mark is going to come up, that hardware is going to be now directly contacting with your virtual machine, and it's going to work like that. So pretty fantastic stuff. Now let's go ahead, and you can definitely try the Ubuntu, but I am here to walk you through with the installation process. So let's click on the install Ubuntu here. Okay, come on. Now it's going to take a little bit while because I'm recording it at the same time, as well as we are installing it. So it's going to consume a lot of memory. So my machine is going to be a little bit slower. And make sure you choose proper keyboard because changing the keyboard afterwards is a little bit pain in almost all of the Linux. So let's click on the continue, and we'll wait for the next screen. And here comes the interesting part. As I told you, you never want to go for the default for anything. Now with the normal installation of especially the Ubuntu and Fedora and couple of like elementary OS, they actually try to install some of the features like default things for you. It's almost like a bloatware that you can install later on if you wish, but right now I don't think so it's a great idea. Things like LibreOffice, OpenOffice, some media players like VLC are going to be automatically installed for you. If you want that, definitely you can choose that, but we're going to go for minimal install. It also says that you can download the updates while installing the Ubuntu. It all depends how much internet speed you have. I got 100 Mbps, but still I'm not going to do that right now, and I'm going to just uncheck that. Now there is another option, which is install the third-party software. So what is going to happen if you're installing it as a full-fledged machine, like a complete OS into your system, not virtualization, then sometimes your trackpad doesn't work, your Wi-Fi drivers doesn't work. So it tries to find the best possible match case for you and try to install that. But in some time, it's not going to do a great job. So you have to install these drivers and libraries manually. So I'm going to just uncheck that for a moment because I don't want to spend a lot of time in just installation. I'm going to click on continue. By the way, everything what we are seeing here is installable later on as well. I'm going to click on continue with the minimal install. And let's wait for the next screen. Now here is the most tricky part where most of people just erase their entire operating system, including your C drive, D drive, E drive, what are the drives you are having. I'm going to talk about the drives in a minute, how many drives you can have, what are the hacks people use, and all of that in a minute. Let's go ahead and click on something else. You always want to customize everything in Linux. Okay. So we don't want to erase the entire disk and install the Ubuntu. And by the time you're coming up here, make sure you have the notes of your drive, because just having notifying the name that I have a C drive and D drive is not going to work here. You need to have the exact size of those disks just to make sure it comes handy. So we're going to click on continue. Okay. Now this is your actually entire hard disk, which is /dev/SDA. The Linux way of dealing the things is a little bit different. It calls everything as /dev/SDA. And if you're installing it as a full-fledged install, all of your drives are going to come up as /SDA1/SDA2 and no actual name of C drive and D drive. It becomes so hard in that case to find out that which one is C, which one is D, because the arrangement is not always like C is going to come at the top. It always changes out there. And one more important thing, this button here which says create new partition table. Windows format of keeping the files is completely different from Mac, and Mac is completely different from these Linux. What are these file systems and partition tables? You might have seen in your disk sometimes that it says, I'm going to format that drive into NTFS or FAT32 or FAT or something like that. These are the way how your operating system likes to arrange all of your files. It's like almost like a library system. Some like to keep all the science book one side, some like to keep them in just alphabetical order. It all depends. So one of the file system that Linux use is ext4. One of the file system that is being used by Windows is NTFS. So that's the difference. We're going to talk about that in the upcoming videos later on. We're going to click on first and foremost new partition table. The moment you're going to click on the new partition table, that means the drive that you have selected or whatever the drive you are having here is going to be reformatted totally. And there is no way, no software that can get you the data back, because the way how these data software get you things back is by rearranging the things. But if the partition entire formatting is changed, there is no way to get the data. So it's always good to have. But in the case of virtualization, don't worry. This is not going to do entire formatting of the entire OS because it doesn't have privilege to go there. So don't worry in this case. We're going to click on continue. And there we go. Now it says that the partition is being changed, means it is ready to be partitioned. It hasn't yet partitioned that. I'm going to click on this free space here. So notice here it is the free space. It is not yet ready to be used by our Linux, because notice here the type, it has no type right now. It doesn't know the NTFS. It doesn't know FAT32. It doesn't know ext4. The mount point is also not mentioned. What is this mount point? This mount point is actually responsible. Where should I start keeping all of my files? What should be the root folder? In the case of Windows, it's mostly the C drive. It depends what operating system you're having. In all of the Linux system, we have the mount point as /. Yep, just one /. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Now what you want to do is select that, and now you want to click on this plus button. This plus button is going to say that I want to create a partition in which I'm going to install my operating system. Now notice here we are having primary and logical. So technically, yes, this is hackable a little bit, but technically you're going to have a 3 partition system. No matter what the size of your disk is, it's 1 TB or 10 TB, you can have 3 primary partition in your operating system, and only in the primary operating system you are allowed to install the operating system. Surely there are ways around to go and challenge this particular rule. It is possible, but it's not a good idea. And you can have one logical partition. This further logical partition or extended partition can be further broken down, and you see like 10 different drives in the people's operating system. So again, probably we'll discuss that a little bit later on. We are going to look for this beginning of the space as for this one here. So make sure you click on that and make sure you're installing your OS in the primary OS as well, or primary partition. Now notice here it uses ext4 journaling file system, means understand that as like a library system here. And we can see we have got a ext3, 2, we have got some of the FAT as well. I don't recommend to install Linux onto a fat operating system. You're going to make a big mess up here. So make sure you always choose ext4 if you are installing the Linux. That's the one we always want to go for that. Notice here the mount points. In the mount point, you want to write just a slash, just this /, not the backslash. In the Linux world, we always go for the /, and Windows world goes with the \. So keep that in mind. We're going to click on OK. And now it's going to take a little bit minute, and now it is ready. Notice the type actually got changed to ext4. Mount point is here. Size is also mentioned, and used is unknown because we haven't installed anything up here. There we go. Okay, one more interesting stuff which a lot of people just forget about that. Notice here at the bottom which says device for bootloader installation. This bootloader is going to be your very first file, which is going to tell from where to start looking up for an operating system. And if you fail to install this particular step, that means it's going to be a problem. You want to use directly by default in the place where you are installing your operating system. The bootloader ideally should be in that same place. And notice I said ideally because yes, there are ways to challenge that as well. It's a Linux, it's a completely customizable and a lot of things can be done. But ideally you want to install that in the same thing here. So notice when I say it's in the dev/SDA, I'm using SDA1, I'm using that in that here. Surely I can say that I want to install it in SDA1. That's usually the case. But in case we are going for that, we just want the entire disk to be used that. Later on, I'm going to walk you through that how you can challenge this bootloaders and grub system as well. Why, when you install the Linux, the first default selection is always Linux, how you can modify that, and how you can make the default as Windows should load up, dual boot. It's going to come up later on. Have patience. So we're going to click on install now, and definitely you can change the grub file and locations. So we're going to click on install now. Okay, now it says so far we have just practiced everything and we haven't done any like particular things being written on your disk. So you can, if you can go back and you can just completely forget that anything happened to your operating system or your hard disk. So this is the last moment where things are not yet crazy yet. Once you click on the continue, and that's it. Now the things may go crazy, but if you have followed all the things, you have listened to me properly, I don't think so you're gonna mess it up. Okay, now my region somehow is giving me the Kolkata. Probably it should give me Delhi, but hey, looks like it also loves Kolkata just like me. So we're gonna click on continue, and now we need to process one more step. The one more step is to choose your username. Now we're gonna discuss about these username, root user, and bunch of other things later on. Right now we want to just go for that. So we're gonna give it a username of YouTube right now, and pick a username is YouTube. That's fine. And for the password, I'm gonna choose LCO. I'm gonna choose again LCO. That's a very weak password, but we're gonna talk about these password policies and everything probably later in the course. You can choose a different password which says subscribe. Yeah, you can choose that also. And now we're gonna click on continue. Okay, so this is gonna take. Now what you need to do after this step is simply just stare at your screen. Nothing can be done at this point. It's gonna just install everything. Now once it has installed everything, it's gonna just ask you to restart. You don't need to worry anything. Just click on restart. Everything is gonna be fine. Everything is gonna be good. So that's it for this video. I hope you have enjoyed the installation process. You have learned a couple of more things about file systems and a bunch of other things, and definitely we're going to talk a lot about them. But right now there is an assignment for you. The assignment is really simple. Since you now know about the ext4, the file system, the grub, a lot of formatting system as well, I recommend you to try to install the CentOS operating system onto your virtual machine. If you are able to successfully do that, just click a photo with that CentOS installation and post me on the Instagram. My ID is Hitesh Chaudhary Official. I would love to see that how many people are following this series. If you're following it up, I would love to continue this one. Okay, so in case anything happens, do let me know in the comment section. I would love to see your feedback and we're gonna go from there. So that's it for this video. I hope you're enjoying this. If you're enjoying it, do please let me know. It gives me a good and very big morale boost that I should continue this series. So please let me know in the comment section. That's it for this one. Hit that subscribe and I'll catch you up later on.